what will Nebraska's 2024-2025 schedule look like with the new Big Ten additions of Washington and Oregon? Now the Big Ten's going to have to blow things up again.
How about that?
And, they haven't set dates yet for 24. We know opponents. And I think when I look at it right now and what other people in the league have said, don't expect wholesale changes, maybe expect like one opponent change. So I think it's going to make sense where Nebraska could lose a Penn State or an Indiana or a Michigan State on that schedule. And then it's going to get replaced by a Washington or an Oregon. And now Nebraska already goes to UCLA. So would Nebraska get 2 West Coast trips?
Wow. Think about that.
Now,
2 West Coast trips, one against UCLA and one against either Oregon or Washington. Hello.
Now, will one of those teams come to Lincoln instead? So
that'd be fun too.
Indiana plays in Lincoln, Michigan State plays in Lincoln. Replace one of those with one of those teams, or get rid of Penn State on the road. Personally, would you rather go to Penn State on the road or Oregon or Washington on the road?
What do you think?
Oregon or Washington on the road.
Yeah, I'd rather just go about anywhere on the planet than Penn State. So yeah, I mean, that first game I went there in 2002, I went with my uncle Mike, and he's in Washington. I was a student. I sat in the press box, but flew into Harrisburg. We went to the game, drove into the game, and I'll never forget how long it took to get home from Harrisburg after that game. I mean, we didn't get back to Harrisburg till like 4 a.m. Yeah, from State College. So you take that there's very windy, hilly roads.
It's rough road. I mean,
yeah.
I went by somebody like the Amish people were like, and the guy was in like one of those wagons, and we just passed the guy in a wagon. I'm like,
that's an interesting trip. It
is isolated.
Yeah. I like the idea of going west into warmth, into warmth. Generally, it's pretty warm.
Warmer air. Yeah, I wouldn't call it like going to Tempe or something.
No, but it's warmer, generally speaking. Austin Stadium's a great atmosphere, as you know. I mean, that game was fun to cover. That atmosphere in Austin's awesome, as is it at Washington. God, come on. Yeah, either of those would be great.
I think it's safe to say, though, every year Nebraska's going to get 1 West trip, if not 2, and they're going to have 2 of those 4 teams on the schedule, if not 3, because of the location. I mean, I think the Big Ten in general is going to want to avoid the negative blowback of the Maryland to Washington trip, the Rutgers to Oregon trip. Like when you talk about these moves, that's what everyone freaks out about. What about those kids are going to have to travel from Maryland to Oregon or, these?
It's legit.
It's a legit deal. So that's why I think it makes more sense for a Nebraska and Iowa, even a Wisconsin or Minnesota, to pick up one more of those games to eliminate some of those games for those far Eastern teams.
Yeah.
And I do think you're going to see week 0 into play going forward. So then you can have an additional bye week. And why do you want additional bye week, Steve Stipple? Because then when you travel that Maryland or Rutgers, that long cross-country trip, you put the bye week after that.
Yeah.
Because it is a beast. I mean, think about when Nebraska played at Fresno State.
Mm-hmm.
That game was a 9:30 Central kick.
Mm-hmm.
7:30 out there. It was 100 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get back to Lincoln until like 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
Yeah, you have to, for many years, I think most people, for sure myself, would think about it in terms of how's this going to affect the next week in terms of practice and your ability to win or lose. I think a better conversation or a more germane conversation is think about the kids' mental health a little bit. Think about their overall well-being. That's not a great scenario. And sleep is important. Classes are important. All that stuff factors in. And it's now people are going to say, does it really factor in? Does it seem like it factors in? Is when Nebraska adds Florida, or excuse me, if the Big Ten adds Florida State, do you think they're thinking about the student athlete's mental health? It's getting ridiculous what they're doing, what's happening, other than the SEC. The SEC has stayed regional. God bless the SEC. The SEC is where it's at. It's the best conference. It is absolutely the
You know what
best
the most regional conference is, though? The Sun Belt. They refer to themselves as a bus league.
God bless them.
I mean, every game.
That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Now we've blown it all up, and we're going to deal with it. Now the good news is what you're going to get in the Big Ten's excitement. These games that we're talking about, my God,
big brands.
Yeah,
I mean, they're like bowl games every week.
Yeah, it's going to feel the magnitude is going to feel big almost every week.
Don't you think we're going to go to 10 conference games eventually with this many teams?
Yeah.
But the SEC's got to get off their butt and go to 9 at least. They're still going to play 8 right now. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the one area where I'd criticize the SEC. It seems like they're heading towards 9, though, right?
Well, they're trying to get as many teams in the playoff as possible. I mean, that's their end game, and they're always going to get 3.
Everybody's in game.
I mean, I think it's safe to say the SEC and the Big Ten could get 7 of the 12 spots, for sure 6 of the 12.
Yep.
And then you're going to see, obviously, the Big 12 get 1, maybe 2. The ACC probably get 1. Notre Dame could get 1, and then all the other conferences. And we still don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-12. What a mess.
No, it is a mess. Well, we know right now there's 4 teams. We just don't know what's going to happen with those teams. And I don't even want to speculate.
And two are like-minded, and the other 2 are Stanford and Cal kind of have their agendas, and Oregon State and Washington State are a little bit more realistic about what they're looking for.
Yeah, Oregon State and Washington State are just in a terribly unfortunate situation in that their brands just aren't. They're just not that strong. I mean, they've gotten good. They've had their moments. Leach had Washington State at 11 wins. Oregon State won 10 games last season. I'm not saying they're bad football programs, but they just don't have much brand recognition, and then they're in little markets.
And they're hard to get to.
Right. So a lot of this is just marketability, brand recognition. A lot of it's come down, it almost seems like, to perception a lot of the time. You don't know. I mean, I think it'd be informative for everybody to make a list of what these conferences are looking for. And I think you'd find that it's marketability in terms of how many eyeballs can you attract, right?
Well,
how many TV eyeballs can you attract? That's a big part of it. Brand recognition is a big part of it. I think what you've done lately factors in. Now, that's not good for Nebraska, but Nebraska's brand and the fact that they draw such good TV ratings, that's not going away.
Okay, and
not in the near future.
You can back this up a little bit more. Like I listen to the Sirius XM channel 84, the college channel. Rick Neuheisel talking at length about Nebraska in his interview with Amon Green on your radio station, 93.7 The Ticket. Another show I listened to in the afternoon, they spent a good 10, 15 minutes talking about Nebraska. So like for where Nebraska is at record-wise the last 6 years, it is really amazing how much just the interest of the program still keeps it relevant.
It's amazing
because the fans they have not gone away.
Right. And in Nebraska is a draw. They're a TV ratings draw.
They're a page view draw. They're a traffic draw. I mean, we see it on our YouTube channel. I mean, look at the numbers these shows are pulling.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they start 2-0, man, it'll be incredible.
No, it's, back to the traveling though, like the sports you worry about are volleyball, baseball, and then I'm forgetting one in there.
Well, the smaller, the non.
So I'm not really worried about men's basketball, women's basketball. They charter, and volleyball charters too. But baseball, softball, that's probably the one that they've got to put some thought into. And Will Bolt had a great interview with Grant Hansen. Right now the Big Ten only plays 8 weekends. He's like, we're gonna have to go to 10, and they're gonna have to come up with a plan to make this work with. The conference for baseball is 17 teams because Wisconsin doesn't play baseball.
Right. And would you play divisions in baseball?
No.
Well, if you don't, there's got a lot of teams you're not going to be playing, Well,
that's why you have to play 10 and then you'll miss 6 teams.
Yeah, you'll miss 6.
But yeah, they're only playing 8 right now with 14.
Okay.
So it's a similar.
Yeah, similar.
But the conference tournament in Omaha and, because.
Well, would you expand the conference tournament field too? That's the other thing.
How do you do that though?
Just go to 10. Go to 10.
And then how about the report by your boy in Des Moines, Kenny Miller, on their show that the Big Ten
KXNO,
the Big Ten championship game is going to potentially be on rotation in Las Vegas.
The report on KXNO, Kenny Miller and Congdon, said that there'll be at least a couple games in Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. Stunning to me. It doesn't seem like it's fitting with the Big Ten brand.
It rolls the dice too, because if you don't get a USC, Oregon, UCLA, or Washington, you're banking on like a lot of people flying the country, because then more than likely that same fan base is going to be involved in the playoff. Because the two teams that are in that championship game with the divisions now eliminated, those are going to be teams that are going to be in the college football playoff, more than likely.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying like Indianapolis is a little bit more neutral.
Okay.
To draw. I mean, it's funny. Rutgers is closer to Indy than Lincoln.
Okay. So yeah, Allegiant Stadium. What I'm suggesting here is the Big Ten's kind of stodgy. So I'm really surprised at this, if this is true. I mean, I don't say I'm not saying I'm stodgy. I think it'd be fun, I guess, to cover that game in Vegas, if Nebraska could ever.
Yeah, getting there without a divisional format. Right. I mean, you're a playoff team.
Right.
And so you can't even like talk about Nebraska playing in that game until they're at that level. I mean, you have to be a college football playoff team probably to be in that game.
How about the Rose Bowl? Why not play that game in a Rose Bowl?
It's bigger. It's harder to fill. I mean, do you really think on a week's notice you're going to get 90-some thousand people? No. The Rose Bowl is a planning destination. The indoor Vegas stadium, I don't know what that seats. Yeah, but I guarantee it's not 90,000.
Indy hasn't always been full. You're right. And some of it is because the prestige that used to be attached to a conference championship has been minimized by what? The playoff.
So the stadium, Allegiant Stadium, is 65,000.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah. I mean, the Rose Bowl sounds romantic, but you ain't going to get 90,000 people in there.
It still sounds romantic.
But it's going to be a spread out spring game feel.
Oh, please, Sean.
You're not going to get 90,000 people.
Michigan, Ohio State. It's not going to be a spread out spring game. Okay.
But they're going to play 2 weeks in a row then.
That's okay.
So you think
I got 25,000 people in the stands for that game?
60. You're not going to get 90,000 people to travel to Pasadena on a week's notice.
But it's not going to feel like a spring game.
It's not like you're going to have a month to plan this trip. It's going to be like you play Saturday and then, oh crap, on Sunday we got to plan a trip.
If USC's playing Michigan for the Big Ten championship, it's going to be full.
But if both teams are already in the college football playoff, are you going to spend your money to go to Pasadena for that or save it to go to the playoff?
Well, it's not an either or for everybody. Some will do both, and some might choose that over the championship game.
I'll make a bet with you. They will not ever play a Big Ten title game in the Rose Bowl.
I'm not
also, here's why.
I'm not betting.
Because it's UCLA's home stadium.
Yeah.
That's a worst nightmare scenario to allow a team the home game for the conference title game.
I bet the comments that we'll receive are favorable towards playing in Allegiant Stadium. I think most fans,
because the flights are easy to come by.
Yeah. All I'm suggesting is it's sort of a departure from the Big Ten's personality.
When Indianapolis was the ultimate Switzerland of the Big Ten. I mean, it's just kind of like this neutral ground.
It's perfect.
I mean, like
perfect. It's perfect.
Everybody just kind of knows the deal. Like, I guess you technically have Indiana and Purdue, but there doesn't seem to be too much of a worry about them.
No, well, Purdue was in it.
They were in it, but I don't think people worry about like it being an ultimate advantage because it's very close to Ohio State.
Yeah,
and
Purdue fans, you don't worry too much about them taking over the event. Now, that stadium, I will tell you, is very handsome. It's a great place to hold that game. It's a beautiful spot to hold the Big Ten championship game. If you're really pinning me down on this, I'd say just play it in Indy. Don't move it around. Just play it in Indy.
Well, that's what the SEC's always done. They've played it in Atlanta. They've anchored it there. The Big 12 went to that. I mean, remember the Big 12, how scattered it was at one point? It was St. Louis, Kansas City, Houston, Dallas,
moved around. That's right.
San Antonio.
Yeah.
They played it in 5 spots.
Yeah, they moved it.
And Nebraska played in St. Louis, San Antonio,
for sure,
and Kansas City. And Dallas. Nebraska never played in Houston. They played in 4 of the 5 locations. And then when Dan Beebe permanently located the game to Dallas, that's when Osborne got upset.
Yeah.
That was kind of one of the punches that really upset. I mean, they took the Big 12 offices.
They took the offices down to Dallas and they moved the game down there. Oh, no, there's no doubt that Osborne, that rankled him.
because it took the weather. I mean, the weather was an advantage of the Big 8 teams, and then you put Oklahoma and Texas in a dome. It was an advantage for them.
Oh, it was big. It was really, it grated on Tom, that move. It was really the kind of random place was St. Louis. It was an odd.
Now it makes, when you think about that, that makes
no
like, and it was full though, right? Did you go 96? Was that full?
Sean, I don't think so. It was probably pretty close. It was fun. I mean, it was wild. Obviously, it was a tough loss for Nebraska, but it still felt weird being in St. Louis. St. Louis is not a college town. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's not.
I mean, I'd love to know how they decided on St. Louis.
St. Louis is not collegiate.
They wanted an indoor. That's probably why.
Yeah.
And
it's they have a nice indoor.
Jerry World, I will say though, like it didn't make sense to play the Big 12 game there.
God, yes.
I mean, those were some of my favorite games I covered. I mean, that Sioux game, the Oklahoma game, those were incredible.
It's a great place to cover a game for one thing. I mean, the press box is, as you would expect, it's immaculate. And then you can watch the game on that big screen. There's no lag time. It's incredibly high definition for a screen that big. I thought covering games there was awesome.